Good afternoon, professor and classmates. Today I will be presenting on static longitudinal stability. My name is Matias Bravo, so let's dive in. First, the content of this presentation includes an introduction followed by a definition. Then we will see the requirements and how these requirements needs to be demonstrated. And finally, a summary with a conclusion. So, what is the FAR 25? In simple words, is the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration set of rules or guideline that defines basically any safety, design, and performance requirements for any transport category aircraft. So, why this is why this is important for the pilot and also the aircraft manufacturer? And it's very important basically because it ensures a predictable behavior of the aircraft, and this ensures a safe flight and safe operations. So, by definition, this illustration shows how a stable aircraft behaves. So, basically, when the aircraft is disturbed, it will naturally come back to his equilibrium condition. So, in a more formal way, is the initial tendency of an aircraft following a small disturbance in pitch to develop aerodynamic moments that oppose this disturbance and drive the aircraft back towards its equilibrium condition. So, the 425 restrictions has four main topics, where the first one is the correct control field of the pilot over the aircraft. The second one is the speed recovery. The third one is the stick force gradient, and the last one is the pilot workload limit. So now we will see each one in detail. So the correct control field, in simple words, means that if the pilot wants to fly faster, he will need to push the stick, and if the pilot wants to fly slower, he will need to pull the stick. So this can be illustrated with this example. Imagine that you are the pilot. If you decrease engine power, your aircraft will start to flying slower, so you will generate less lift, so you will start falling. Now your nose will point down, and you will naturally tend to pull the stick, so you change your elevator position, you start getting more lift, and you can come back to the trim angle at a lower speed. So the second one is the speed recovery. This means that when the pilot releases the controls, the aircraft needs to naturally come back to its trim speed within a range of 7.5 to 10%. And this range exists because it is unrealistic to think that the aircraft will come back to the exact same trim speed. So the third one is the stick force gradient. This means that for every change in velocity, the force that you need to do over the stick will also change. And in this case, change for per 1 pound per 6 knots. So the last one is the pilot workload limit. So basically, this is a restriction for the aircraft that says that the aircraft must remain easy to correct back to the trim speed without excessive pilot effort. So this is physical effort and mental effort. So every restriction needs to be demonstrated and needs to be demonstrated for each phase of the flight. This includes climb phase, cruise at high speed and low speed, and also approach and landing phase. So the the FAR 25 established a range of velocities where this needs to be demonstrated. So for example, if you are flying at cruise at high speed, you need to design your aircraft to have this stable response at a plus minus 15% of your trim velocity. But also you need to design your aircraft to be stable and have this stable response at low speed in your cruise. So this basically set restrictions for your design where it needs to comply with these stability conditions. In summary, we saw what FAR 25 is. We saw the definition and a basic example of static longitudinal stability. We saw each restriction established in the FAR 25 and how they need to be demonstrated. So, in conclusion, the FAR 25 enhances flight safety, makes basically the risk in operations, decreases operational risk, and this ensures a predictable behavior of the aircraft. So it is basically it is putting always safety first, uh, for the aircraft, for the pilot, for the crew, and for everyone who is on board. So this has been all. Thanks for your time and your attention.